weight brush tool, poor animation, and horrendous rendered frame rate. These were the essential tools used to make a horrible project go wrong. And some of you may be wondering, what exactly happened here? Well, I'll tell you the most scary story you will hear this upcoming Halloween. The dreaded story of Blender software. Our story starts rather simple. I had just finished a rubric with this project, and I was going to download Blender and begin my project. A thumbs up from Mr. Shaw, and a start to something I hopefully wouldn't regret. All was going well. When I opened up the project, however, my first problem was that I didn't know how to move. I thought, okay, no problem. I'll just look up that tutorial video I was recommended by a student peer. And just like that, I was moving. And as I continued to watch these tutorial videos about some donut, I figured I was ready to try and model my project. But dear God, was I wrong. Because what would happen would devastate this entire project. For starters, if I wanted to make a model the way I had envisioned them, I would have to create a reference sheet. It looks like this by an extent, and it would really help with the development of my character. So I began to work with the sheet, and soon enough, my model as well. When I got to his legs, however, I had done the worst thing yet. I forgot to exit edit mode! And now you're wondering, why is that so bad? Well, when you add a mesh, which is an object, it would usually come out as its own property, where you can do God knows what you want with it. Scale it, size it, whatever fits your little heart's content. That is under the circumstances you're in object mode. When you're in edit mode, it does basically the same thing, but it becomes in addition to the mesh that you're using in edit mode. Meaning instead of having two meshes that say cube 1 and cube 2, you have one singular mesh that says cube 1. And this wasn't noticeable to me until I had realized it when I tried to separate the meshes. And you want to know the worst part? I had saved before realizing it. So now, no matter what I tried, nothing would revert this. Copy the mesh and delete every single unnecessary vertebrae? Nope. Try to go back to the save and hopefully fix it? Couldn't do it because I already saved it. But people, it gets so much worse. After I had finished modeling and accepted my fate, I decided it was time to get to shading the model. For the 90% class that doesn't know what I mean, that's basically making the color and texture for the little guy. As I was in the process of making the nodes, I came to the realization that the model was changing colors. Yippee, right? Well, he was changing colors entirely. And that may not seem like a problem considering that I can make other materials and just change the parts that I didn't want to be that material, but you don't consider that I suck at Blender. So I unfortunately faced another devastating defeat from Blender, and I had to do one more thing before I would consider this piece of the project done. And that was animation. For the most part, I began to get a tad bit lazier, but I would still come to finish the project. Now, when I had looked up videos on animating, the first thing I had to do was make an armature. An armature in Blender is a mesh that works as a bone. And usually when you're making armatures in Blender, the model has to be A-posing, because if you don't have it A-posing, then the weights get all weird and funky, and oftentimes they make your model spike when you move limbs in any direction. And I found this out because my model wasn't A-posing. So I had to go into the software and use the weight brush tool and fix the weird weights, and even then the model was still a mess. So I'd finished the weights and I was going to head into animation, and when I was diving in, I figured this would be easy since they use keyframes. I use keyframes all the time in Premiere. Surely this would be done easier, right? Well, I was oh so wrong once again. And for some reason, whenever you create a keyframe in Blender, it has to be done manually, unlike Premiere, where I could just click a watch, adjust the video however I want it, and boom, done. Easy as that. But in Blender, I have to create the keyframe, adjust the bones to the position I want it to be in, and then figure out how long the transition between frames will be using a reference video, which I did not make, by the way. And even then, I suck at Blender. I can't figure out how to move these bones for the death of me. And as you can clearly see, the animation was just god awful. But you want to know what really made things difficult? These stupid keyframes would disappear! My beautiful Premiere Pro keyframes never disappear on me. They love me, but Blender keyframes just gonzo. It was perhaps the most difficult part of animating. The keyframes in the first place would just disappear, and don't get me started on these stupid goggles. They wouldn't ever move. I'm almost sure it was a weight issue since I added it after the armature and mesh were basically glued together and I'd already finished the weights, but I just couldn't get the muscle to clean my mess up and just thought, maybe if I could speak my way around it, Mr. Shaw might cut my soon-to-be imminent punishment just by a little. And then there was another thing I had to do before I considered that done, and it was rendering. Rendering wasn't difficult, but it was no easy task as well. I had to make a small little plane for the background and adjust the lights and everything, and then I clicked Render Animation. Well, it didn't really work out well, and I almost wonder if running OBS in the background did something to hinder it, but by God, this was so slow. So to solve this problem, I decided that it would be best to look through the camera and record it with OBS. But in the end, all I knew is that the project had gone, well, pretty terrible. But if I'm gonna be honest, it was sort of fun too. And I'm definitely going to be needing practice on this software, considering my career plans in the future. But for now, it's baby steps for me. I'll mess up every model, ruin every shading in my Blender, and animate in the worst human way possible. All to achieve my lifelong dream of creating something for people to enjoy. I hope you enjoyed my suffering in this video, but for now, until another time.